In this section, we're going to have a look at the transform menu, and specifically tables, any column, text column, and number column. There'll be some revision in this, partly because there's a revision in here already. A lot of this is in the home menu that we had a look at in the previous few videos. So I'm just going to load, just for this video, the CDs, and just have a look around at the start of the transform. Now you can see that it's promoted headers and changed types, but there's 3 header rows at the beginning that we don't want to have the computer ignore. So I'm going to click X's onto those. I'm going to remove the top 3 rows. Now I'm going to promote the headers. I'm going to use the first row's headers, but instead of using it here, I'm just going to show you it's exactly the same in the transform menu. I can use the first row as headers there. Now the computer has changed the type, but if you didn't want that to happen, then you can use the data type here as well. So I can say this is going to be a whole number or decimal number, and you'll see the little icon change. And of course, you can use the icon drop down here as well instead. You can also get the computer to say, well, what's your best guess? Can you detect the data type? So if I was to hold on to these 3 columns by clicking on the first and then holding down Shift and clicking on the last, I can detect data type, and the computer says, well, I think they're text. Now, if the computer gets them wrong, then you can always change them. So, for instance, suppose I say, no, this isn't text. This happens to be a date time. So, there it is. The computer's getting an error, but the fact is you can change it. So you can see it says date time there, so we can go back to the previous one and say file extension, instead of type text, it's type date time. There we go. Now, just starting from the left-hand side, we've had group by. We've already used group by before. First row of headers. Just skipping a bit, rename. You can rename the columns' names, or you can do that by just double-clicking on the top. So this could be file name brackets text. So you could do that by clicking either rename or just double-clicking the header. Replace values. We had a look at replace values earlier, but I mentioned that we could also have replace errors in the transform menu. So you can see all of these errors here. So if I wanted to go into replace errors, and I will just replace them with a blank, but you could replace them with a value if you so wished. In fact, you can see for date time, I can't actually replace with a blank. It says enter a time value. So I'm going to enter a time value. So let's say 2021-01-01. See what it makes of that. There we go. Move, this just moves left to right to the beginning to the end. So we've seen similar things before just by dragging. So now if I get rid of a few of the crazy things that I've just done. Transpose, that transposes tables. So in other words, rows become columns and columns become rows. So there you can see the result. And we'll be using some of these in future videos. So I'm just going through what they are, but as for a practical application, we'll have a look in a few videos. Reverse rows, well, that takes last to end. I mean, first comes last and last comes first. Not often you would be using that, including count rows again. Not often you'd be using that either. Fill, what fill down and fill up does is that if there are blank rows or blank cells, it will fill it down. So for instance, suppose you had a header and then some blanks, which all relate to that header, then you can automatically fill down all of the blanks with whatever's above. Not often you'll be using fill up. There may be a few situations later. And convert to list, so that just removes other columns. So convert to list, we just now got just the one column, for instance. Not often you'll be doing that. So table and any column, most of them you've had before. What we'll be looking at in the next few videos is pivot and unpivot. And we'll be using a lot of what we've got here to help us do this. So this was a quick run through, but a lot of stuff you've had before, and some, like for instance transpose and the fill, we'll be having examples in the next few videos.